So, that one there, isn't it? Yeah. We're moving down to our favourite that some people might be sitting here wanting to know. My Mayor's report. Now, a couple of things I will say. As far as the Commonwealth Games go concerned, I'm bringing this to Council because there has been a lot of discussion about Commonwealth Games bid. During the election, Winston Peters announced his support for the bid. This is simply asking staff for advice to come back with us on what venues we have, may need, accommodation costs, impacts such as environmental impacts. It is not asking for a formal business case, simply a council report based on staff knowledge, expertise and advice. This could be a great opportunity for our city, so we need independent advice to consider it properly. That advice may say it's a fizzer, but at least we've looked at it and have the information in front of us. If we don't ask, we won't know. That's all I'm proposing. There is no decision today. This is about getting the information so we can have an informed debate. I think it's a good time to ask because we celebrate 50 years of QE2, the 10th Commonwealth Games, this weekend. So that's why I'm putting that in my Mayor's report. Have we got any questions of anything else in the Mayor's report? Councillor Templeton.
Thanks. Yeah, I did email through a question a couple of days ago to the Office of the CE, just on what work would need to be deferred, asking for advice from staff and from Christchurch NZ as what work would need to be deferred to do this. We know that resources are quite tight at the moment for getting work done. So I haven't heard back.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm not aware, that question hasn't come to me and I'm not aware of it, but we'll get the question and get you the responses.
Yeah, you'd kind of need to know what work was going to be deferred to get this work done to be able to make the decision to get this work done. And
you mean the report? Just the report?
Yeah, yes, the work that would then inform the report, for example.
Okay. So perhaps we can include that in the report that comes back to you if you pass the report. I can't provide that information today.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Harrison-Hunt and then Fields.
Kia ora, Mr Mayor. Just a question around the costings. I couldn't find it. How much is the report going to cost council for CNZ to do the work to...
I'll ask my learned colleague, who is just a little bit busy at the moment. We'll come back to you on that. Councillor Fields.
Excuse me, Councillor.
Sorry.
In relation to Councillor Templeton's question, it's not expected to defer any work. The date's looking at August, so it's after the LTP and allowing that time for staff to prepare a council report, but not to impact on any other existing work programs. So it's to provide their professional view and information.
So we had a question recently over CNZ and us doing some work on the economic costs of climate change and adaptation, those kind of things. And we were told that there wasn't the resources to be able to do that without deferring other work. So I'm not quite sure how this wouldn't defer other work.
So it will be led by council, but with Christchurch NZ to provide their view, but not to lead it like in the same nature as that particular report, which is a Christchurch NZ-led piece.
Yeah, okay.
Supplementary to that.
Okay, so Tyler.
Yeah, sorry, cheers, Boyd. The question I have is around, would CNZ, how much do they charge usually for a report? Because obviously they're outside of us. We could easily do things internally, but CNZ will probably invoice us for work done, right?
I doubt not.
No, this would be an internal report, but we would ask them if they have any view they want to submit to include in that report.
All right.
They don't charge us for the work they do on, say, all the work they do for bringing Sale GP here, so they wouldn't charge for that.
Couldn't this be a part of the events package that we're looking to potentially review?
This is just getting it underway to ask the question, is it possible? As I said in there, it could be a fizzer. They could come back and say it's an absolute fizzer. So,
meaning, couldn't it align with the events package works that they've actually bid for that $5 million? That's just my curiosity. That's the only reason why I'm asking you.
Okay, all right. Councillor Fields?
So You've indicated that New Zealand First have supported it. It's in their manifesto, and I guess they're a credible party of government, so they probably stand by their promises. But wouldn't we, before we even did this, wouldn't we want like a firm commitment from the government of like something in the order of $2 billion to even start even thinking about it? And have we asked that?
This is what I'm envisaging. This is the question that our staff will go out and ask. We have got, after the earthquakes, one hell of a lot of facilities here that the only thing that I can think that is a bit of grief is accommodation. So that's something that will be asked. I went and talked to Grant Robertson about this time last year, I suppose, the Minister of Finance, and threw it up in the air and said, what do you reckon? He said, if you're going to do this, please spread it out around either the whole of New Zealand or the whole of the South Island, so it's no burden on any particular place. We don't need a velodrome built here. We've got a perfectly good one in Invercargill, and there's one in Cambridge. We've got a rowing facility in Cambridge and at Ruataniwha and Twizel. We don't need to go nuts and spend a fortune. All of the stuff that we've got, we've even still got the town hall, which has been done up, which had the weightlifting for the 1974 games in there then. So it's just go out. Is it at all possible? I'm sure they will ask the government if there's going to be any assistance in their building of the report, and just come back to us. And as I say, it could be a fizzer. But if we don't know, we won't know.
May I ask just to follow up to that then, please, Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Oh, okay. Yep.
In which case, and how then would it be a Christchurch Commonwealth Games?
I wonder if you need to reread what you said at the start, which is just getting staff advice on the feasibility of the Commonwealth Games.
Yes.
Have we missed something along the line?
New Zealand.
Or if it's just
It's
political
just
shots,
get it
then
here.
it's probably not helpful.
As I have talked about long and hard, I am working hard, and everyone here is working hard, to try and get Christchurch at the sporting and events capital of New Zealand. This is just one way of getting it. You're dead right. It's not necessarily called the Christchurch Commonwealth Games. The FIFA Women's World Cup was spread between Australia and New Zealand. I don't think it was called the New Zealand, it was just called the FIFA Women's World Cup. It couldn't be called just the Commonwealth Games. And we did very well. As Christchurch did all right out of it. We had a couple of teams here who spent a bit of money in our fair city. The rest of the country did a wee bit better because they actually played games in their city, but we spread it around and everyone had a bit of the take. But just get the report done and see if it's at all feasible. That's all I'm after. Councillor Johansson.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to check who's responsible for bidding for the Commonwealth Games in terms of the city or the country?
We don't know that yet. That's what the report.
That's what the report will tell you, and I'm sure way back, and I'm actually going, there's one person still alive in the Commonwealth Games organising committee. He's a very, very keen guy, but they'll start up an organising committee, and that'll go from there. But this is the first step of years and years of work, and it, as I say, it might be a fizzer. So that's all I'm saying.
Can I just get clarification over why we're asking for the 2030 Commonwealth Games when the New Zealand Olympic Committee said that they're looking for New Zealand to host the 2034 Games?
No, that could come back.
Whatever the report comes back at. Because you've got to remember, the 2030 Games were 100 years of the Commonwealth Games, which did start in Canada. Now, they decided to pull out at the 11th hour to speak. They put it out there, and all of a sudden that spot became available. It's a bit like the one in Australia, 2026. It came available at the drop of a hat. No one knew. There is no way in the wild blue world that New Zealand or Christchurch could ever get into gear by 2026. Councillor Donovan, please. Yeah, I've got you, Sarah.
As part of the feasibility study, we'll be looking at whether we have some of our basic infrastructure repaired by that stage. I'm thinking things like Pages Road Bridge, which we still got quite a significant shortfall for, and also public transport, making sure that we're looking at transporting people around the city, how we're going to do that if we're deferring things like our cycleways. So
I don't know where we're getting the information that we're deferring our cycleways because of a Commonwealth Games bid. I don't think you're right in what you're saying there.
Oh, the one out to the eastern suburbs, I think, is in the draft, sort of pre-draft for starting in FY29. So that won't be ready for some time.
Okay, what else we got? I have got Councillor Templeton, please.
Thanks. Just carrying on from earlier, when I was first elected, and then since then, there's been a lot of chat about trying to make sure that when we're asking staff for work, it's work that will be valuable going forward, that will really lead to some good outcomes because the resources are tight. And at that time, we were told that getting a report written for council and going through the system, gathering information, going through the system was about $5,000 worth of sort of staff time and resources. Is that roughly the same these days, or is it more? I'm expecting it to be more expensive to get a report done these days.
We don't have up-to-date costings on that, but potentially for this one, we do have Christchurch NZ, who are our economic development agency, who are charged with looking at these. But it does cost time and resources, yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, did I get Councillor Scandrick, please?
Thank you. As already mentioned, the New Zealand Olympic Committee has looked at and thought about 2034. So would it not be optimal to say through Christchurch NZ to save our staff any work with regards to that we are open to being part of a New Zealand-wide Commonwealth Games, if that, to look at that if we were going to go forward with this, rather than doing it independently and then feeding back to the Olympic Committee. The Olympic Committee have already opened their eyes to the possibility of 2034, and I'm sure that they will be doing New Zealand-wide feasibility, because as we've heard and we know, a number of other cities have pulled out because of the cost, which is absolutely prohibitive. Our population of our entire country is less than some of those cities that have pulled out. So would that not be the logical way to go forward?
We can put that in. Do you want? We can do an amendment to make it 2030, 2034. It does. All I'm doing is just throwing the net out and see what is it.
I'm just thinking about the process. Would the process not be better to ask CNZ to go via the New Zealand Olympic Committee, who have already expressed opening their eyes to the possibility of a New Zealand-wide 2034, rather than our staff pushing it, or CNZ pushing it, to say we are really open because we will have a new swimming pool, new diving. We've got a number of facilities that could be used if it were a New Zealand-wide. But that, as Councillor Field alluded to, it would be good to know through the New Zealand Olympic Committee if there were actually government funds that were going to be open to this, rather than
that will all be discussed in that report that they do. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. Good idea asking for a report. There's no harm in asking for information. I think hiding your heads under rocks is a silly idea. So well done on that. My question really comes around clause 2 and asking the neighbouring councils for regional contributions around the Te Kaha. And I'm wondering if we should be including Environment Canterbury in that list, seeing as how they are the regional council and would be a logical one to ask.
Yes, that's right. The reason, you're talking about Te Kaha now, the reason that I've put that in there for Te Kaha, there's been lots of chit-chat, informal chit-chat between me, different mayors, different seas, all sorts of things. And we get told, oh, why didn't we ask? Why didn't we do? This is a formal step in the ground, a formal, please, what do you think? They might say, get stuffed. They may well do that. I don't know. But if we don't get the ball rolling, they won't. But you're right, we can throw Environment Canterbury into that as well.
The Crown contribution represents the regional contribution.
It is too. Now, we've got to also remember that the taxpayers, the Crown contribution through 220 million plus 10 million for decontamination of the ground. Yeah. Into us, they've given us the land for nothing. The ratepayers the taxpayers of New Zealand have contributed very well to us, and I'm very thankful for that. We're getting a lot of the cost paid for by everyone else. But there's been a lot of talk about why haven't we asked them? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do it? Let's ask them and see what they say. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, the process for Environment Canterbury or the Regional Council making a contribution is slightly different to district councils. So Environment Canterbury would have to consult the district councils about rating all the districts for it. So it's a different process than them just including it in their LTP. They'd have to consult the other councils. But we can formally have discussions with them, but it's a slightly different process.
Yeah, but is it possible for us to add Environment Canterbury into that to make it a threesome rather than just a two?
I don't know. Well, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. The Mayor's proposals in the long-term plan is for quite substantial cuts to the events ecosystem funding, which will leave us with barely anything to bid for events. If we're going to have barely any money to bid for events, how can we be thinking about a Commonwealth Games bid?
So, just say that again.
The Mayor's proposals in the long-term plan
Yes.
are for scaling back the events ecosystem fund, which will leave us with barely anything to bid for events. So if we're planning and budgeting or not having money to bid for events, how can we be talking about this?
As I'm saying,
It's a report, but how can we be doing two at the same time?
as I'm saying, do a report, find out what the hell is going on. Have we got the facilities? The Deputy Prime Minister has said to me that he is keen to assist us if possible. So we need to investigate that avenue. I don't know how much the Crown would or could. They might find that they've just walked into a massive hole of no money and they go, whoa, things are a lot worse than what we thought. We can't possibly help you. But if we don't do a little bit of homework, it's all very well me prattling on, saying, oh, let's do this, let's do that. We've got to get people who are far more on the game as far as Commonwealth Games stuff or big events than me to do a report and come back to us.
But is this in the hope that the bid will cost $0? Because we're currently budgeting on there not being money to bid for events. So are we doing this in the hope it'll cost $0?
I am hoping that we can use, it will still cost money, but we can use our facilities. A lot of the people over in Australia and Alberta and Birmingham and all those things, they went and spent zillions of dollars on brand new facilities. We have got a lot of fairly...
I'm talking about the bid itself, which will still have a dollar amount attached, and we're budgeting...
It's in relation to the long-term plan. I'm sure the Chief Executive can confirm that, so this would be 2030 or 2034. The reduction in funding at the moment is over the next 2-3 years as we work through that gap. But as you'll appreciate, as you'll understand, it's a 10-year budget, which we revise every 3 years, which would increase that events funding.
So bids for Commonwealth Games are done many years in advance, and you would still need money as part of that bid.
So I'm not sure what I'm not explaining. And it's not. No, it's
well, if you're making a bid within the next 3 years, you would need funding within the next 3 years as part of that bid.
So just to be clear, the proposal is deferring, at the moment the proposal is to deferring the events funding to outer years. So if it's in the LTP with events funding, when the report comes back it could be allocated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, now I've got, did you have, no, you're all good. Councillor Fields, then Councillor Johansson.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Phil. Like, I love the Commonwealth Games, eh? I do. I'm even wearing my original 1974 cufflinks, Commonwealth Games cufflinks. Even though I wasn't even alive then. I wasn't just. So I've got two questions. So first of all, why is there any compelling reason that we're having this discussion now, when we're in the middle of a hell of a contentious LTP, where we've signalled all sorts of terrible things to the city? Like, why are we having this conversation now? That's question one. And two, I'm not really picking up an appetite at all from the people of Christchurch for this. So why don't we just whack it in the LTP and see what they have to say about it?
Are you talking Commonwealth Games or are you talking Te Kaha asking?
Sorry, I'm talking Commonwealth Games. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair comment.
So what's the compelling reason we have to discuss it now?
No, just to be clear, to put a proposal in the LTP, we would need to have a proposal with some costings. So
okay, that's fine. That's cool. That answers that. Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
But like, why are we discussing it right now? Like, what's the massive hurry?
If you don't start, you never get to the end of it. if you, yeah, no, that's right.
But I mean, it's not like we haven't got enough going on at the moment. That's probably what.
We've got plenty going on. This is just something else to keep us on the boil, right? Councillor Johansson, then Kewen.
So I just wanted to check. Did you want to get into the Te Kaha now as well, or do you just prefer to keep it?
It seems to be bouncing from one to the other. So if you want to talk about Te Kaha, you feel
Sorry,
free,
that's
mate.
my fault.
No, that's right. Other people asked about Te Kaha.
Yeah, okay. I've just put in some amendments because we already have an outstanding action around engaging through the Mayoral Forum for a regional contribution. So I'm a little bit concerned about number 2 because it's only going to 2 of the councils, and we've got a Mayoral Forum that brings all the councils in Canterbury together to talk through this issue. So I'm just trying to understand how we can get progress, and I understand staff have said in terms of my amendments that they want to bring a report or a briefing back in March, but I'm just curious around timing, because if we need to set up a regional rate or a levy, we need to get into the LTP conversations with those councils or ECAN as soon as possible. So is there a way that we can get a fast-track action through the Mayoral Forum to get those councils to consider?
You could just add Naomi's and Sam will second it.
Okay, if you want to add that in, Sam will second it.
Well, I've already sent through some amendments, and Boyd has been sending stuff back. So we've kind of got an agreement around some amendments to my amendments, which Andre has seconded. But I just wanted to check with you in regards.
We were just signalling. Sorry to cut you off. We were just signalling that we would include in the substantive your agreed amendments.
So those are on screen now.
So rather than you actually having to put through an amendment
Okay.
and it being second, the mayor and Sam are happy to just amend these
Just put it in.
ones.
Yeah.
In the
And
substantive.
can I just, this question of central government's contribution, offsetting regional contributions, offsetting other people contributing, can I just get some sense of if we've had any discussions with local MPs or ministers around a sort of local members bill for a local levy like we have with the museum? Has there been any conversations with central government over that possibility? And if not, what would be the best way to get that to be considered?
You mean do a similar thing to what the Canterbury Museum has got?
Yeah, basically.
That is administered by, which is an act of government, which is administered by ECAN.
We used to have a Victory Park board bill, for example, and we've had local members.
We can
So
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, but we can actually look into that and come back with some advice around it.
okay.
Okay. So hang on, we've got a few hands going here. Councillor Kewen, please.
Yeah, so I just want to ask you to be very clear, Mr. Mayor, because it would appear are you trying to be open and transparent about conversations you've had with, like, the Deputy Prime Minister over him raising the possibility of the Commonwealth Games? So you're putting it in the public domain so we get the information so we can make an informed decision as a council on the possibility or not possibility of ever hosting the coming together of many nations in the future. Is that what's going on here? Is this a form of openness and transparency?
You're absolutely correct.
Right, okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. This is just getting information. You're not looking to spend money other than Christchurch NZ are already budgeted to spend money over the next year on looking at proposals like this.
Christchurch NZ spend money, as you say, they spend money on Sale GP. They might spend some money
They'll
trying
spend money
to...
on 5 things that do not go ahead.
Exactly. There'll be
Because they
things
have
that
to
they
look at it.
throw effort into that doesn't happen. So that's what they do, and they're very good at. So thank you.
Okay, so just clarifying that's what
Yeah,
we're
thank
doing today. Just getting information.
Yep, and that's what I think I said at the start. Councillor Scandrick.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the wording in number 3. Sorry, bounce from Te Kaha to this, but would it not be better to put the wording saying to offer Christchurch the options to the Olympic Committee for viability of their bid for the 2034 New Zealand Commonwealth Games? So it's not us pursuing?
The committee do it anyway. You could put 20, 30 or 34 in there if you wanted to.
At the moment, the wording is to Christchurch's viability to bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games. That is totally different to saying that to work with or offer to the, or better wording. But it wouldn't be us that make the bid, though. It would be through the Olympic Committee.
Yeah, but when you're talking about bid is miles down the road.
I realise, but it's just getting the journey started on the correct foot, because the journey starts with the first step, and this one's stumbling. Just saying. Yep.
Okay. Councillor Donovan. Yeah, that'll be you.
I was just curious to know, because I see that Christchurch NZ is also making a bid for the International Masters Games in 2030. Do you think that might be an issue with capacity? We're looking for a RFQ for that. So I was just looking at the timing. So 2030, Christchurch NZ has put in an RFQ for the International Masters Games. Mm. And I think that attracts crowds of up to 25,000. Just wondering whether we think Christchurch NZ might have a challenge in sort of looking at both proposals at the same time.
You could be right when you say Christchurch NZ are very good at balancing a whole lot of things in the air at the same time. They're very good at it. They'll know which is good, which is bad. Is it no good for this year? Is it better for next year? They'll do all. That's what they're experts at. Yeah.
And if we're looking at two bids in the same year, whether that would actually be a good use of their time, capacity of our facilities.
This is what the report will bring all back to us. What will we do? Do we want a couple of seats?
Yeah.
What I'm getting here is that we pull out number 3 altogether. What do people think about that? Request, Christchurch NZ, advice on viability. Take it out. Everyone's disappointed with it, we'll take it out.
So there are a number of questions that need to be answered before you make a decision about this. So we are suggesting that you pull this, that the Mayor thinking of actually pulling this resolution and explain and answering some of the questions before you have to make a decision on it. So get
only asking for a report. What questions? Is it about funding the report?
So there's a lot of questions about funding the report, whether it should be 2030 and 2034.
We'll just put 2030 or 34, and then that's sorted.
Okay.
I think we should have a vote on this. I don't want to.
Okay, so we leave it in.
But maybe vote on it separately.
Yeah. You want to?
Okay.
James.
Righto. Councillor Goff, you have a question, bud. Where is he? Are you there, James? Okay.
His mic's moving, but there's no audio.
His mouth is moving.
Yeah, his mic is.
Your mouth is moving, James, but you're... I can't... Oh, there he is. Nope. Nope. No, I can't hear you. No. Okay. That's right. Don't worry about it. So what do we suggest now, Mary? Where are we going now?
So the feel of the room seems to be leave it in. Remove it.
I'll tell you what.
You advise if it's removed.
I'm obviously moving it. And I've got a seconder in... Yeah, sorry, it seems very second. So we'll go into debate and just talk about it.
Would you like recommendation 3 struck?
No, the Mayor's decided to leave it in.
Okay, so have we got any debate? Who would like to be first? Councillor Cotter.
Okay, well, this is a tricky one. I'm just going to speak on the stadium one. Stadium one. I'm going to speak on the Commonwealth Games. I think that actually I'd like to look at this as an opportunity. This is a great opportunity for CNZ and City Council to actually, and the Greater South Island, to look at this, take a stock take of what we've got, where we're at, what our facilities are, what we have to offer, what infrastructure we have, what infrastructure we would need, and I think, as the Mayor alluded to, the big challenge would be accommodation. And all those things, if it was to occur, and we're not saying that it will, it could be a fizzer, but if it was to occur, we would be left with a greatly improved stock of infrastructure and public transport and housing. So that is something to bear in mind. The report will come back with information about the climate effects, and I think it's really good that people are concerned. I get really confused at this point now because I know that the Rolling Stones have just announced a world tour this year, believe it or not. I know. So what do? Do we think, well, do we not want overseas acts coming here at all? Do we not want anyone coming here? Foo Fighters tonight, I don't know how many young people are going to that. It's all about balance, and if we are going to have attract visitors to our country, we need to sort through that challenge, not shut the gate necessarily. I don't have the answers, but perhaps this is one way to get some answers. So for me, I'm not seeing any detriment in getting this report. I think we could actually get a lot of information in this report, and we will learn a lot about our city, our region, and what the South Island and New Zealand can offer. As far as Christchurch goes, Aotearoa, oh my goodness, this city is just getting so much incredible feedback. We are an accessible city, it's easy to get around, we've got these incredible facilities that will be, one would hope, ready by 2030, but at least 2034. So I don't see any harm in asking for this report, so I will be supporting the Mayor's recommendation today.
Councillor Barber, please.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, I totally agree with Deputy Mayor Cotter. I think, we need to be aspirational. We need to look at these things in a really positive light and plan for the future. If the Rolling Stones, given their advanced age, can consider coming on a world tour, I mean, they might not even be alive by the time it happens, but, they've got to actually put those dates in the calendar and give it a go. So I think it's fantastic that we're seeking this information. We'll be able to make a decision one way or the other based on that information when we have it. But, let's be aspirational as a city and try and move forward instead of shutting things down at every first sign of a little bit of fear or a little bit of opposition. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Scandra.
Yeah, thank you. And Te Kaha's an arena, not a stadium, just correcting that. I've been doing that for 10 years, but we won't go there anyway.
Good work.
Look, it's kind of odd comparing the Commonwealth Games or even Olympic Games to a one-off concert by the Rolling Stones or the Foo Fighters or whatever. They are totally different beasts. But I would like to see a report of sorts, but my concern is I think we're looking at this the wrong way. To come out and say New Zealand Commonwealth Games via Council and CNZ through the New Zealand Olympic Committee would be the proper way, I believe, to go forward with this, to get some information, because they are the people that will be leading it. I just think the wording is wrong, and I think, as they've already identified, 2034, if other cities whose populations actually exceed New Zealand's have pulled out at the 2030, that's not for us to pick it up. The New Zealand Olympic Committee has already identified there could be an opportunity for a New Zealand-wide, and that would be a first in the Commonwealth Games, I believe, with you've got the velodrome down in Invercargill, right through to somewhere in the Northland for canoeing maybe, or something, to spread the joy throughout New Zealand would be the way to go. But I cannot support the wording as it is today, sorry.
Okay. Councillor McClellan.
Thanks. I checked in with Christchurch NZ yesterday just to make sure I kind of knew what we were buying as a council, and they mentioned that a full feasibility study would cost $100,000, which was I was relieved to hear that that's not what's being proposed today. Nothing close to. They also mentioned that they actually have looked into this very subject in the past and could easily access that information from the shelf, essentially. So on that basis, I mean, I'm not entirely sure which way I'll vote, but I may abstain. I don't want to stand in the way of getting what will essentially be pretty cheap advice, which will tell us what we probably already know it's going to tell us, which is this is not viable. But it would be good to draw a line under the matter once and for all for a relatively low cost.
Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I'm in favour of asking questions and giving a report to get the information we need to make an educated decision. I think that's what we sit around the table for. I'm not threatened at all by the fact that asking for a report is anything hugely significant. It's giving us a bit of information to be able to answer, is it at all a possibility? If it's not, fine. If it is, good on us for having a look and seeing if that it could be done or couldn't be done. Also like to speak to item 2 there. Pleased to see Environment Canterbury being added to that list because it makes sense for a regional contribution to ask your regional council. I'm supportive of the Mayor's report today and looking forward to seeing the communication to the neighbouring councils and the regional council and see what they have to say. As Mayor rightly says, they might say no, they might say yes. They might surprise us and say, look, we'll step up to the party and help out with the operational costs. But we've got, again, ask the question. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get an answer. And same thing with the report for the Com Games is, if you don't ask for a few facts and figures and feasibilities, and is it even a dream that could be achieved, you'll never know. So it's good to get that report, and it'll be good to be able to progress or put that to bed, whichever. So,
okie dokie. Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. So I think it's really interesting to hear the conversation and the discussion about the Commonwealth Games bid. But I just want to start by saying, actually, I think the reality is that the Commonwealth Games, the big events model, is a munted model. It's about as munted as the munted infrastructure we've got in the east of the city. And what we need to do is actually focus on the things that are important to us now, given the significant impact that this would have. I think the timing is absolutely wrong. There are many other priorities that we have. Interestingly enough, nearly a year ago in April, the New Zealand Olympic Committee said it was interested in hosting the Games following the implementation of a new hosting model, which allows for more flexibility and innovative games. And what they talked about was being clear that the concept is not about a city, but about a nation. So they are going to do the work. We don't need to do it if you want to have the Commonwealth Games in New Zealand. But what's also interesting is they talked about the timing, and they said they need to make sure people have got the time to be really innovative and creative in preparing a feasibility study for 2034. So the idea that we could somehow get advice for a Commonwealth Games in 2030, nearly a year on from when the New Zealand Olympic Committee started looking at a feasibility for 2034, to me makes no sense at all. I like the Commonwealth Games, who doesn't? But the reality is that the idea that we should do this sooner than the New Zealand Olympic Committee can do it doesn't bode well for me when we've got other priorities that need to be addressed. There have been a number of things that people have talked to us in our city that we would like to do. For example, we've got live local music venues shutting down because we cannot provide a framework that supports the issue of having loud music in the inner city. I would much rather see Christchurch and Z focused on supporting that type of issue than this one. I think the reality is that we need more local events that are not as costly. The idea that cities compete to host these major events, as I said, is a completely munted model. It needs leadership from the New Zealand central government rather than us as a local city. This is well beyond our capacity to deliver, and I think it's far better that we allow them to do the work that they're already doing that can inform us for any conversation we may have about the future participation in a New Zealand Commonwealth game.
Okay, Councillor Templeton, then Moore.
Viability is about possibility. Is it possible for us to host the Commonwealth Games. And yes, it is probably possible given enough resources. But we need to be realistic, and the question is not could we, but should we host the Games? The answer is clearly no. Many cities larger than us have taken a look at hosting the Commonwealth Games in recent years. Cities with much bigger populations and better infrastructure already in place. They've taken a look and they've declined the opportunity because of the cost. The costs are not insignificant, and they are not limited to simply having some physical facilities in place. But hosting cities need to provide security, transportation, and a host of other expensive arrangements. The bid cost alone for the 2022 Games was £20 million. And I'm sure that we can find a much better use for $42 million in Otatahi. Rates are currently sitting at over 15% for next year, and this will pale into insignificance should we go ahead. Yes, we could spend money to improve our infrastructure for the Games and be left with better infrastructure. But you know what? We could spend that money on improving our infrastructure without the added cost of the Games anyway. Like Councillor Barber, I want to be aspirational, but I want to be aspirational for our future and not a nostalgic past. We heard a long list of potential projects from deputations earlier in the meeting, and frankly we should be funding our must-haves, our water infrastructure, transport system, waste reduction, climate mitigation and adaptation ahead of a 12-day sporting event. As a city, we've signed up to halve our carbon emissions by 2030, and that should be our priority. 12 large-scale international concerts. Let's bring in Taylor Swift. They'd be much cooler and easier to do, but a lot cheaper. And Councillor Moore is right. We aren't even budgeting enough money currently to bid for them. And we can't bid without the support of the New Zealand Olympic Committee, so any work that we do would be irrelevant, as they do not support a bid for 2030. Some will say that we're just asking for information, but we know that our staffing resources are stretched and that CNZ's budgets are too, and we're looking at defunding them. Work that we have previously work that we've previously asked for may have to be delayed, such as a review into our governance structure and potential committees, which I've already been told staff will struggle to do due to resourcing. And there's simply no point deferring work for a project we know we can't afford and shouldn't do. And let's be honest, we don't have a particularly good track record of signing up to expensive projects and expecting others to pay for them.
Thank you. So I've been delighted to hear a couple pick up on how great it is bringing events to Christchurch, but it is quite right. We're looking at deferring funding to literally bid for events to come to Christchurch. So I was extremely surprised to see this item come on the agenda. And the type of events that fund bids for are all proven to have a really strong economic benefit and return. The Commonwealth Games doesn't share that same return on the dollar spent. I can't get my head around that. The advice that we've received on what deferring events ecosystem fund, we're not allowed to talk about because there's commercial sensitivities involved, but I thought it was frankly quite devastating. So I've been really surprised to hear this. A bid would require money that we don't have. A bid does not come free. They do literally cost money. It's been cited that accommodation's an issue. 100% it would be. Unfortunately, the good old days of a billet system are gone. You could absolutely make this work if you could bring that back. But realistically, the committee has huge requirements on infrastructure, accommodation, so on and so forth. And this council has spent the last few years trying to make it harder to build housing. So the idea that we'd change our tune and say that high density housing units are fine for athletes but not the residents of Christchurch also makes little sense. We can't change our tune on housing now in the hope of bringing athletes here. We literally spent the last few years talking about how that kind of housing is not okay. The Commonwealth Games system in general, it is broken, or as Yanni's described it, is munted. Their requirements are simply way too high. The Commonwealth Games Committee, they need to change their tune. They need to completely revamp the Commonwealth Games to make it workable. That's where other cities aren't working. If they change their tune and revamp how they do things, then I'd probably support looking into a bid. But until that happens, there's a reason why countries aren't queuing up to bid. They are queuing up to stop their bids. I disagree with comments that there's no harm in getting advice, because yesterday we had a public briefing which talked about rate rises of potentially around 15%. And if the public see the headlines that we're staring down the barrel of a 15% rate rise, and then the next day they see that our council is exploring a bid for the Commonwealth Games, that will do harm to people who see that, who are struggling to pay their bills. People will feel fear. They will feel harm in those things. The time is not right. People are genuinely worried about paying their bills. We would love to see more events here. The best way to do that is not defer our events ecosystem fund, which literally funds bids for events here. But this headline will cause fear. It will cause harm when people see that. It will really genuinely upset a huge proportion, I believe majority of our city. Thank you.
Well, I could hardly have said that better myself. I definitely couldn't have said it better than you just said it, Councillor Moore. I think that you've just said everything that was kind of percolating in my head. I also, there's several comments made that I absolutely agree with. I couldn't agree with Councillor Scandrett more. I think that we're just doing this back to front. Like, it just feels like that we all know that an event like this couldn't go ahead without some serious government money anyway. So it's all very well to say, we're just getting a report for some information. Well, they're just going to come back to us and say, well, you need a couple of billion from the New Zealand government. And I just think that just sends all the wrong signals to everybody. A government that's really struggling with our national finances at the moment. A council that's just said yesterday that we're forecasting a 16% rate rise. Like, the optics of that are just abysmal. So for the fact that we're even considering this right now is just I just can't get my head around it, actually. And I absolutely love the Commonwealth Games. I think it's a great event, and you know, I'm aspirational for our city as well. But as aspirational, trying to bring an event here that's well past its use by date. And as Sarah said, just trying to hark back to a nostalgic past that doesn't exist anymore. So I just don't even really want to go down this path at all, really.
Okay, Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Kia ora tātou. I completely support the sentiment of Councillor Moore and Councillor Fields and also Councillor Scandrett. But I wanted to add a couple of things, and one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the Economic Events Fund that CNZ are bidding for, and calling out that principality of hypocrisy. Too many times we're saying, it's just a report, but many times councillors around this table have refused reports on certain projects that aren't aligned with them, particularly small pet projects. So if we're going to continue to do that, there is no surprise why the public call us hypocritical. We're all ashamed of it. And at times, it's really important to continue to call out things that are most likely not going to be feasible. We know this. Everyone knows this at this table. And with all respect to the Mayor, it's a great bid to be looking at. And I know that it's something that you're really passionate about. And I'm happy to support that in other ways, but in this way I cannot support. Reason being is there is potential climate impacts of which I don't want to be a part of. There are also many other things in regards to the future generational impacts, of which we've seen with Birmingham, who are going to be having to foot the bill for many, many years and try to get bailed out from the government, and also with the other cities that are going to be pulling out of this. So when we're talking about things like this, I challenge this council to actually support the CNZ Events Fund, and then maybe we can come back to this. If we're going to do that in principality, maybe support the CNZ Events Fund, and maybe then we'll relook it and revisit it. Put that as part of the bid. But until then, I cannot support this. I'm okay with supporting the others. But in regards to the bid for the Commonwealth Games, I cannot support it until we actually back what we say and do support economic events in the city, internationally and nationally, while also understanding the impacts that come with those. Kia ora.
Okay, right. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Phil, for that. I think, look, these are always interesting discussions, and I think it's healthy in a democracy that we all respect actually other people's views, which is really useful in this. Look, I think actually the mayor is the mayor, and if he wants to call for a report from an organisation with nearly 3,000 staff, there's no reason in doing that. He's entitled to that. He's elected at large across the city, and I back him in doing that. I think probably two other things. You know, the reality is I just want to acknowledge actually, Phil, we have talked a lot about the Commonwealth Games, but actually the work around the stadium, you know, this has been underway before we even got to council. So actually formalising this today is, I think, actually a really useful tool. The reality is, I think everyone has said, and quite rightly, we've missed the bid on capital funding for the stadium, but I think as the Deputy Mayor called out quite rightly, actually, that wider Crown funding makes sense in that respect. What we need to be targeting is that operational funding every year, because actually wider Canterbury will benefit from that. I think formalising this is really good. It puts in place some processes that will work. And like I said, I just want to acknowledge you for bringing that to the table today. I just thought it was really interesting, nostalgic past, and I just want to say that before I finish, because I think that's going to be the election slogan for next year, because I've heard it twice today.
Thank you very much. Now, with that, I'm the Councillor Donovan. Yep. Wait.
Well, I was going to open with nostalgic past, but I won't anymore. Instead, I'll refer to Back to the Future, which is one of my favourite movies. And, you know, when we talk about, you know, looking to the future and being aspirational, I'm not quite sure why we're looking to the past. There are lots of things that we can be supporting as a city, and there's a lot of opportunities that we could be getting reports on. And as another councillor has acknowledged, we've actually asked for a few reports on things that would be quite aspirational, and this council's declined to do that. I think if we're going to be aspirational, I think we should be looking at what are the aspirations of the next few generations. We know that we, as Councillor Moore has commented on, we do have issues with housing our current population. So making accommodation for athletes does seem somewhat less of a priority than making some good decisions now. I think most of what I need to say is being said, but I also want to acknowledge Councillor Templeton's comments around, you know, looking at the impacts of where we should be spending our money in terms of climate change and mitigation. And as a council, we still haven't really faced up to the realities of this. And that's work that we should be prioritising now instead of these sort of fanciful dreams for the future. So I won't be supporting this today.
Okay. Right. So what we're going to do is take a 10-minute break to... Sorry, Aaron, I didn't see you down there, mate.
That's all right. I just wanted to add a couple of bits. It has been an interesting debate, and to see where people sit on this. This is purely just asking for information on stuff that's being talked about in the public domain constantly. A number of people in this country would love to see the Commonwealth Games return to New Zealand, and today's vote is about letting their voice be heard to get that information. This is not committing to a bid. It's, can it be hosted by a city, by an entire island, or is it an entire country, and where would the money come from? The reason Victoria fell over is because rather than use all the facilities that are already in Victoria, in Melbourne, and some of the best facilities in the world, as an election bribe, the Premier went out and said to all of the regions, I'm going to build you all of these facilities. They'll be brand new. They'll be the greatest in the world. And they then couldn't afford them. So that's why those numbers skyrocketed so much. But everyone here would probably know that. There seems to be a couple of... So we would represent the people in this country that love sports and love the celebration of 52 nations coming together, representing a third of the globe's population. And coming together as nations is possibly a good thing right now in the world. And I have heard some attacks on the Commonwealth Games, and it's a thing of the past, so on and so forth today. And fair enough, that is potentially true. But to not host games, the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games, and other events that bring nations together will be to the world's detriment. And yes, flying has a carbon footprint, but also be aware that the carbon footprint of these things now exceeds flying. And so I'm looking forward to the protesters coming in, telling all of the councillors to close up their devices and stop using them so much. And those 10,000 kids with their, and I agree, post-it notes was a good idea because it didn't add to the carbon footprint, that these devices is now higher that so the cloud and computer data centres has a higher carbon footprint. And even though, and I love the transition to other renewable energies, but the world's now spent $5 trillion and increased our usage of solar and wind farms by 2%. So we've spent a lot of money getting not very far. So we need to stick to getting what we do right and not just attack one thing like the world coming together to celebrate sports when we may or may not be able to afford it, but let's get the information, because that's what an informed council would do. And I agree we should fight things like climate change and global pollution, because a percentage of our population want us to do that. So I do support that. But also a percentage of our population want us to play sport and enjoy the company of others from around the world and come together rather than fighting. So let's look at, is that feasible? Thank you.